Thank you all for coming tonight, and welcome to the candidates. Appreciate your time as well. I should start myself. I'm Brad Perry, CEO of Grain Producers SA. We are the big body for grain producers in South Australia. We're holding these forums effectively to help the growers and communities better understand who they're voting for come March, and giving you the opportunity to ask any further questions you've got. I'm not only agriculture, but also the communities that you live in as well. We'll just start by an apology we had a late withdrawal from Thomas from SA Best due to a family emergency, so he wanted that to be passed on, and we haven't heard back from Ben Anker from the Australian Labor Party. So in some ways, it's good we've only got 6, because 8 may have been a big juggle in time for questions. So what we'll do to start off with is we'll get the candidates to outline why they're running for the seat of Flinders, and if you get time, the biggest issue, we'll try and keep it short, the biggest issue that you're hearing here in the seat when you're out on the campaign trail. I'll have to keep you a strict 3 minutes just so we can make sure everyone gets to say. And then we'll jump into some questions after that. So we'll run down the line. We'll start with Craig closest to me. Over to you, Craig.
G'day, I'm Craig Haslam. Just run for orders again and remember what he wants to say. What we're saying.
Start with your name.
Yep.
Why you're running for the seat of Flinders, the biggest issue you've heard so far from campaign trail for this year.
Okay, so Craig Haslam, I've been on the air since '93. I'm a business owner, I've worked for the state, doing a lot of government, and I suppose the reason I stood up was I've just seen so many band-aids put on lots of problems, and I actually really wanted to make a difference and an impact. So I was asked about 12 months ago if I'm interested. Liz Penfold actually asked me in 2005 if I'd be interested, and I said, we'll go with bloody politics. But come now, I think the time's right. What I'm hearing, water and power security is big, health is big, but I also think people are just looking for change. So I reckon my 3 minutes is up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sam Telford, Liberal candidate, ex-Canberra City now. Look, 3 minutes is not long to summarise the challenges we face, but in the end, it's about making sure we get proper investment into the things that are necessary for building the basis of our community. So it's roads and infrastructure. Craig mentioned about water infrastructure, which is really crucial, and getting a health system which actually works for us. In the end, if we're not investing into those base foundations that we need as a community, we're going to go backwards. But the opportunity for the peninsula and the west coast is massive if we actually do get those basics right. So that's what I've heard for the last 4 years, and I'm continue to hear. We've had some positive outcomes, but also it's always a great challenge in making sure that people over that side understand what's happening on the ground here in the peninsula.
I'm Megan Patrick, I'm third generation local. I live here and I work here, and I raise my family. Run a business directly tied to primary production and export, so I understand what it means to operate in the weather, timing, and when the season doesn't work. I know what it's like to wait for a paycheck because the weather hasn't come good. I know what it's like when you're looking at that in the week, month, and May. I'm not a career politician. I don't have to make programs or decisions and down to Adelaide, but my accountability is specifically on communities. One issue I care deeply about here is the future of rail on the peninsula. Not as a nostalgia, but as a practical response of what we are living with right now. Our roads are becoming more dangerous. We're seeing more trucks, heavier loads, and more pressure moving through downlight on the important. Fixing roads alone isn't going to solve the problem. It's a great task to run. Don't keep coming, and rail matters as it's always done more smooth rail. Rail built communities there was once scrub. It supported towns like Lock and Woodland, not just economically, but socially. Every year we see another football team disappear, another small business close, and other towns lose their heartbeat. West Coasters, sport is we're able to advise legislation and not be involved. If elected, or the independent voice of Flinders, I work with whoever the government is making happen for our region. Every decision made will probably be judged on one simple test. Does this help people live and produce here? I'm here to be accountable, accessible, and present. Thanks, guys.
Okay, I'm doing Gavin, I'm doing that national standard. Why am I running? Well, if you want something you've never had, you've got to do something you've never done. And I think that we've had a long history of a lot of decisions being made from offices in Adelaide and the people that live here that will live those consequences not being heard now. I'm running because I think that if there's a big enough impact and a big enough change in terms of running to the election, it doesn't matter which the big parties in charge, they'll start looking at the region differently. And that's really down to the crux of it. For me personally, I've always seemed to go into leadership, whether that's in my local church, whether that's in Parliament, whether that's supporting the city council. I feel that I have the skills and the ability to listen and to learn. And really, I mean, I can talk about myself forever, so I'll pass on.
Today, I'm Roy Keto. I'm from Flinders Coast, the Peninsula, and tour operator out there for 18 years, in and out of the region for the last 40 years. I'm running for the seat of Flinders and Independent, and I'm currently working on an innovative way to create change on the Peninsula. Over the coming weeks, we'll be releasing our platform, Innovate Ways Change. We'll be working with the government of the day and also with innovation and changes that will see rural South Australia operate better. Currently, we want to bring in a bit of a activate community. What's really important to us, and what I have been looking at over the current 3 weeks, is the connectivity between regional centre like Virginia, Cows, and Port Manly. One of the main things that we're seeing is that the health system, as everyone knows, has been quite hit, especially on the Flinders Coast. What we'd like to be seeing is open up the access for health systems, aged care, to have connection between Tuna, Port Lincoln, and also Cows, Port Lincoln, which increases the hospital benefits of the west coast of the Peninsula and the east coast. That being said, is really having a public transport will benefit the mental health and also the health system and services that we can provide in the region of South Australia. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Brenton Haynes. I'm the One Nation candidate running in Flinders. I grew up in Cleve and I now live in Port Lincoln, so I am a local as well. But I'm also an accountant, so I know how most of the farmers' businesses actually run as well. I know farmers are pretty much background of the future from both an economic sense and NGO supporting bodies. As your One Nation candidate, we strongly believe in supporting all your our farmers, making sure you have the right infrastructure around you, and even the support mechanisms that you need. This includes roads, rail, reliable electricity, mobile coverage, and even local hospitals and hospitals to even making sure access to funding and or grants is more streamlined and reduce the red tape to access that. I'm here to listen to your concerns tonight about the region. I know we already have a policy on our website for agriculture, so we've got some other policies as well, but they are just looking at the draft at the moment, and we want to actually talk to you, make sure we can get those up to the standard that actually helps everyone on the Flinders electorate. One of the main things I think you're probably hearing about is the energy and the cost of living. We are looking at possibly putting up a power plant in Port to affect the energy cost, and also cut down immigration that's not required to help the cost of living and housing prices. Thank you.
Thank you. You have a microphone between 3 as well, so just to make that easier, I'll pass it down. I forgot to add as well that we are recording this session, so we'll be putting that on the GPSA YouTube later on, sending out that out for our newsletters as well. Let's start with a question that's important to grain producers today, and probably comes as no surprise to you all. The reinstatement of rail on the peninsula has been proposed, and there's been a request for state and federal government funding. The question to you candidates is, do you support the return of freight rail for the peninsula? We might start with David down the other end. Brendan, sorry, down the other end.
Hello?
Yep, you're on.
Hello? So One Nation is big on rail. We want to bring the rail back on Eyre Peninsula, but not only do we want to bring rail back on Eyre Peninsula, we want to connect it to the national rail as well. So we're thinking long term. I know short term there are some things we can do, but we also want to make sure that rail actually benefits everyone, not just Port Lincoln. So you've got T-Ports, you've got Sejuna, and then you've got the national rail as well. So we're actually in the background talking about ways that we can bring it up, possibly over 3 stages, but we are working on it and we will get something out to you.
Yeah, so the SA Nationals are in favour of bringing back the rail. Similar to what Brenton was saying, I think that a staged approach would probably be the most wise. From what I've been hearing, it's from Cummins down to Lincoln that really needs to be the focus, and then once that's done, going further on up the peninsula. I'm in favour of going to the standard gauge rather than the narrow gauge, and that will help unlock the potential of the peninsula as far as what we can import, what we can export.
I think I'm pretty clear on supporting rail. Met with Minister Burke today for further discussions, so hopefully get some action on it as well. So definitely for rail.
Thank you. This is a fascinating subject because it's got a bit of history. I was in local government when the decision was made by Viterra to stop using the rail line. I mean, it's well on record. I thought as hard as anyone to keep it going and work closely with other levels of local government to try and do so. And even like touched on, even just sections of it for a period of time to try and prolong what the potential can be. I've been fascinated with the way that the government has gone about looking at what happens next with infrastructure on the EP. In conjunction with local government, they paid 25% of the body of work, did a grain export supply chain planning study. Sadly, it hasn't been released yet to the public. I've been calling on the government to do that. And they promised a business case as well, which was due at the end of 2025. Because in the end, we can't say, one section, the whole lot, whatever, without actually knowing what the business case looks like. And that body of work is essential for making those decisions. The reason that it got closed at the time, like I said, was that the end user wasn't willing to enter into a contract with the rail operator. With that changing, with Viterra now funding open to the opportunity, I think there's great chance for there to be a wise decision made about sections of it, how much that costs, and what that long-term impact cost is going to be for taxpayers and farmers, importantly. I hope it's going to be encapsulated in this business case because in the end that's the best places to be able to do it. And look, we need a long-term strategy when it comes to freight movement on the EP because at the moment the infrastructure that we've got isn't being invested into by the government and they're kicking the ball down the road by sitting on this report for such a long period of time. So I've spoken to both the previous minister and the current one and made the observation to them that without that real strategy when it comes to investment, we're going to go nowhere. It's not good enough for the EP to continue to be forgotten with a lot of the state's economy and especially the agricultural side of it. So I think with that proper business model in place, the opportunity for rail is significant, and whether that's a section or whether it's the entirety of the line, that strategy should set it out. Thanks, Sam.
So, just a bit of history. I was, prior to 1993, Subsequent to that, I've also been in Canada seeing their freight limit. I've also seen Western Australia's in wheat milk just how big the trains are and how successful they are. But the reason is there's been investment, and there's been capital investment, and really what they've done each time they've started up again, as an outsider looking in, there's still another band-aids, we're still using the old 830 logos, we've still got rail that's depleted. So if they are going to do it, let's put a proper investment into it and let's make sure it works. Otherwise, we don't want to waste more money. We actually need them to commit big dollars and make it work.
Thank you all. We've got 6 candidates, so we might jump straight to the audience if there's any questions from the audience. Ron's got a roving mic, so if you want to put up your hand, we just need your name and where you're from to ask a question. So does anyone want to kick us off?
Yeah, my name's Cameron Manning from Spooky Bay. I guess my main concern, can you hear me anyway?
You can, yeah. Use the mic just so we make sure it gets picked up.
My name's Howard Manning from Spooky Bay. My main concern is road traffic, the increased road traffic with heavy transports, and I mean that most sincerely. I travel over to Ceduna a couple of days a week with another young lady, and
I know the seal birds on that particular road, you might know.
see technology is now. There's no sealed verges on that road, and
You've always been, the truck driver has no choice but to either go into the dirt or always come in. It's on.
technology's not my favourite. It is a real concern for me. There's just a massive amount of traffic on that road, all V-triples, and it just continues. Sometimes we travel over to Ceduna, there can be 7 or 8, and you see them coming, and you get a shower of stones, and it's almost mandatory. I don't know, to be frank, how that's acceptable and how it's been acceptable for so long. Without being derogatory to anybody at all, it's pretty backward social policy, I would imagine. So I don't know what you candidates think about that, but that is my major concern. I'm not on top of all the machinations behind different gauges and everything else. That's not my area of interest. But I think it's essential that at some stage that rail corridor is reintroduced and held in public hands, I might add. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. So I think there's, we sort of touched on rail there, and again, so you know we can talk about, maybe you're welcome to address the rail again, but within the 3 minutes each, I think road funding is a really important one as well. So let's touch on any final questions I have. Anyone else on rail or some road funding? We'll start with Dylan actually.
Right, road funding. Well, yes, the National is very big on infrastructure. I mean, the roads, the rails, our jetties, our wharfs, they're the lifeblood of life in Flinders. An increase in support and funding, but then also the ability to be able to drive on these roads is crucial. I think something that kind of that we need to focus on when it comes to our roads is that either the road, if the rail isn't going to be brought back, we want it to be, but if it isn't going to be brought back, then the roads need to be focused on. We can't just leave either one of them to just deteriorate into nothingness. But I think what we've seen is that there's kind of been that offhand approach where there hasn't been that focus, where they haven't been listening to the community, where things haven't been changing where they're supposed to change. We need to have that greater focus on making sure that the roads are fit for purpose and that we're not seeing the issues that we are.
We're right.
Yeah, I agree. Road, rail and transport, vessel transport as well. The road conditions out, especially on the west coast, between Ceduna and Port Lincoln, some of those roads are in absolute disrepair. Shoulder roads need to be worked on. And the funding.
You don't need to hold it. Just press it once. You don't need to hold it.
There you go. Yeah, and I think with the council areas as well, what I've been led to believe in some of these council areas is the road funding isn't quite up to scratch with state funding. I think these councils on high-speed roads in our area are lacking the funding and support they have from the state government. So I guess as candidates or as member of parliament, we'll be advocating for a lot easier access to road funding and also easier access for some of these councils to apply for some of the funding through different channels, and especially with their grant writing as well. I think that's it's imperative. Also trying to make a major change as well on how we're actually heard out here the Eyre Peninsula is a big thing. And I think having there's a lot of kind of silos in the way with the way that the roads are being looked at as well, and also for a regional area here being going to the state government asking for funding, I think it's a little bit outdated and old. So I think having a new approach to the way that the regions need to be heard. So yeah, I think that's a definite looking in towards the future on potentially the structure of looking at regional sustainability.
Thank you. Maybe.
Road is definitely a big concern across the electorate, which I've been hearing day in, day out. So infrastructure, the lack of voice that we've heard has been heard in Parliament to get that over here. We contribute economically astronomical amounts from this region to the state. So we need to be able to get that back and that infrastructure on the roads.
Yeah.
Thanks, Greg. And this probably underlines the issues that are pointed out, underlines the fact that despite whatever the business model, business case looks like for freight investment, rail is not the panacea because, you know, if you look at the Weekly silos, you look at the Wilson silos, Tumby Bay silo, Rano Bay, none of these are on the rail line. And, you know, the challenge of trucks going through Liverpool Street, Humboldt, Lincoln, a lot of those tons have never been and wouldn't be on the rail line. So road infrastructure is crucial. The previous government, after the rail closed, did a significant investment into the Lincoln Highway, so that's the one that goes down the eastern side, overtaking Lane, Shell Zealand, and the Todd Highway between here and Kaikoura was if you remember, 8 years ago, when you're sitting behind a road train and passing each other, it would be a terrible thing. That road now is a lot safer to drive because there's been investment into the shoulders. The next crucial step for mine is the Flinders Highway. And the section between, worst sections for mine are from Swift Downs to Juna and the section south of Nelson. And if you drive that road as much as I do, you realise the dangerous situation you get with, you know, 30, 40 centimetre drop-offs on the side, which are, you know, really unacceptable in a time where we've got trucks going through. We've also got, you know, the amount of caravans that you see going over the west coast, inexperienced drivers driving caravans, actually there was some pretty challenging, horrific, unsafe scenarios that I've seen. So the Flinders Highway shoulder ceiling is crucial. You know, a wider road really is a safer road, and the section between Cummins down to the intersection of the top of the Flinders Highway, and we were so close to getting the overtaking lane put in that money was in the budget previously, and under the Labor government resolved it somewhere. They use the excuse of native vegetation rules, which is another area which we might get onto later on, Brad. But you know, those crucial main three thoroughfares, as well as the air highway going across the top, for investment for freight movement, despite that, is going to be really crucial. So this is why I say there really needs to be a strategy put around investment areas. Liberal Party is committed to increasing the amount of expenditure and investment into the road network by 40%. Right, so we've got it fully costed within our election costings for a 40% increase, and that's $1 billion over 4 years of additional regional road maintenance funding. Because at the moment, the amount of degradation on our regional roads is out over $2.1 billion. So that's the gap between what should be expended and what actually is being expended. So we're committed to adding that additional money in if we're supporting government, but it also highlights that the ongoing expenditure just hasn't been there under this government. It's something which really needs to be rectified. We've been at the pointy end of it over here, while all the money's been going into, you know, north-south corridor and other areas like that.
So might go down the other end to Brenton.
Where do I go from that? One Nation does support major money put into the roads on the Eyre Peninsula. Obviously, rail will help, but as Sam touched on, not a lot of the silos are actually on the rail network. So probably need to make sure that those roads get a lot of the funding as well. But there's also the areas up around Cow, Slucky Bay, Sejuna, where there's a lot of trucks going in and out as well. So we need to focus on that. If that means that we might have to possibly cut down on some of the government bodies that are putting the red tape in front of this, that might be something we'll look at and support. I think a lot of it comes down to cutting the red tape so we can actually get this funding over to the EP. And we also believe that a lot of the roads should be taken and funded by the state and give as much support to the councils so that they can focus on what they need to do on their little roads and keep the main roads on the state.
Thank you. Last one, please. Great.
Thanks. My business goes between Adelaide and Perth, and we do between 70 trips across the Melbourne each year. I mention that because Western Australia is really taking great stands. Melbourne going across it, they've got really wide, they've got good tracks, they've actually got also the vegetation moved away from the road to make it a clearer, bigger road. I think if we go to local government, for those of us in being local government, each local government has a rating road, 1, 2, 3 or 4. A 4 rated road is probably something that gets graded once a year. The evidence was 50% of the state's growing, it's over 80% of the state's seafood. But the state government treats us as a number 4 type road. We get minimal investment. We actually need to say we are a major economic zone of this state, and we need to put our hand up and try and do that.
Thank you. Good question. Have we got another question?
In relation specifically to roads and bail, or?
Sorry.
Does the question have to be specifically?
No, it can be anything. Any question. Happy to open it up. We'll just go to Mark.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to know where your support or your major funding come from individually as candidates. So where your support is where your obligation is usually policy-wise. So I'm wanting to know where your funding, your major funding supporters are from each candidate, please. Thank you.
All right. Well, we might start with Rob this time.
Self-funded. Yeah. Sorry? Self-funded. Yes, mate.
Me?
So I'm self-funded and community, so as donations from family and friends that have supported me along the way.
Craig?
As an independent, self-funded, and also family, and some community funding as well.
Brenton?
So my funding is with One Nation, but we are limited to what the state government allows, which I believe is about $1,000 or up to $5,000 per donor, and I'm running on about $1,000 to $5,000 mark.
We'll go to Sam.
Yeah, thanks. The legislation on the major parties is pretty tight these days, so people donations. I don't know what coming from gravel.
So I'm in a similar boat to Brendan, funded by the Nationals Party, and they have an amount of donations they can take from a donor.
All right, thank you.
So none of you have support from Climate 500? Climate 200, sorry.
So just to confirm, that's not available now. The maximum anyone can contribute is $5,000, and the maximum campaign for the state election is $100,000. So the maximum that anyone can donate is $5,000, whether that's me or not so much me, but as anyone donating, the maximum is $5,000, and it's all.
Okay, no, thank you.
Right, we got another question. And just make sure you take it now where you want to.
Oliver from Peninsula. Question for Craig here. That a number of his supporters are Climate 200 funded. Do you get funding through other avenues such as your business or from Climate 200, and has that happened before?
So two of my team is Nicholas, who was she still was independent last state federal election, and also this year, and they did have funding from climate action, that is correct. But as we said, that's not possible this year. However, they are on my team and they're giving me some amazing support because they've been through that challenge. I haven't. So for me, it's a huge learning curve. But there is no greatest amount of funding can be $5,000 from any organisation.
And through your personal business as well?
Yeah, I'm funding.
Donations?
No, I'm funding most of this business myself, and all of that registers. If you look at there, we can actually show you always every donation that comes to the person is there. But thank you for asking. Did that answer the question?
It's an answer to a question. Yes.
Okay. I hope you got to speak louder than that.
All right, yeah, Mark. Let's get back to, there are a couple of very political questions there. I'm going to throw in a question. So, there's a weather forecast black hole, as everyone I'm sure knows, on the Eyre Peninsula. It's impacting particularly farmers but others' ability to make decisions. And do you support funding for a Doppler radar for the Eyre Peninsula? So, we might start with names.
Absolutely support the Doppler. We're a primary production area. We rely on weather to do our day-to-day activities. So you could be negligent to this area not to have something like a Doppler.
We'll go to Brenton, I think.
One Nation are very supportive of the Doppler radar system. We just got to make sure it's actually at a state level and not a federal level, because I believe the Bureau of Meteorology have to get behind it as well. So we support it. We just got to make sure we can actually implement it properly.
Dylan?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's not really much that I can add after what's already been said, but yeah, I am and the Nationals are 100% behind Doppler.
Sam?
Yeah, thanks, Brad. This has been a subject matter which has been close to my heart for the last 6 years. Even before I was in State Parliament, worked closely with what was really set the framework for the business case for a Doppler weather radar, which was the body of work that was done that set out some of the structures, some of the funding structures. Now, for those that don't know, if you actually look at the radar system across South Australia, there's a radar up at Ceduna, and there's a radar at Buckingham Park, and in the middle, in between those, because the radars only get about 300 kilometres, is a big black spot, which basically incorporates the whole of the south and eastern part of the Eyre Peninsula, the Spencer Gulf, and obviously the lead up to the York Peninsula, which is another highly productive agricultural area. So this has been something which I've written to both federal and state ministers about, because as we sort of touched on, it needs to be a collaborative approach when it comes to this. Look, I'm very proud to announce that the Liberal Party at state level have committed an election commitment of $5 million as a capital contribution to the Doppler weather radar. Now, the Western Australian state government made a significant contribution to the capital investment to get it set up, and the New South Wales state government did something very similar. I've been calling on the current state government to do so. They haven't yet, and this is why the Liberal Party made this a real priority for, and not just farming, but for agriculture, for the fishing industry of the Spencer Gulf and the West Coast, but also for emergency management. You talk to the CFS, you talk to the SES, and they're flying behind us to some of the weather changes that can happen pretty instantaneously. I've been out on fire grounds where we've had the CFS chief that was in charge of the fire grounds ringing people on the West Coast, fishermen out on the water, saying, when's the weather change going to come? And trying to pinpoint that time as to when the wind change is going to come. So, as a Liberal Party representative, I'm really proud that my state team put within our fully costed election commitment, which I'm really proud of, $5 million as a capital contribution to the Doppler weather radar. It's something that needs to happen. We're the most highly populous area across the whole of Australia that doesn't have a Doppler weather radar in place. And, not just for the productivity that we see with our agriculture and fishing, but as a population centre, it's a crucial thing for infrastructure.
So great.
It's just got to happen. I think that it's about lifting us in the state government size. We're a major economic zone. We need to actually start to say, using a farming analogy, we get release and bits and pieces, and we give them the police. We need to get some police, and we need to do a trial and things like this. So, I think all of the support we want to have.
Rob.
Like Sam said, it's imperative that we have the forward forecasting capabilities, especially emergency services is a big loss to not have that Doppler. And also for us, we're not so bad out on the far west coast, but yeah, definitely 100% support.
Thank you all. Have we got another question?
I have, if you don't mind.
And it's more the people-based. I fully support the development or the future development and the further development of agriculture and business in this region, but I'd like to talk a little bit about the personal development of people on the ground and in communities. So in my small community, I did approach the state government a couple of years ago through the local mayor. What I want to try and do, and I want to get a bit of a feel from all the candidates about this, is got a bit of an idea about setting up community houses or what we might call a social hub. And so this is not a great big glossy project. It doesn't come with bells and whistles, but I believe it's as important as anything else. If we don't have healthy people in this region, we don't have healthy businesses, and we don't have healthy anything. So I would ask the candidates, how would you support a purpose-built state fund that would fund the development and ongoing management, importantly, and that may include a couple of paid positions at small community hubs in the towns across the Eyre Peninsula that don't currently have them. And my town of Streaky Bay, which is a popular tourist resort or tourist destination, and is closing in on 2,000 people, doesn't currently have a social hub in any way, shape or form. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. We'll start with Rob.
Preventative healthcare as well. It kind of comes into that whole look at what we have to support our youth to grow and develop. Youth hubs are amazing. What we need a youth hub, that'd be an amazing feature of the West Coast, Eyre Peninsula, East Coast, and also Cal. I think Cal's got something pretty cool here, which is a really good model. But without having these things, I think it's a major loss. Funding based, like state funding would be imperative to get the state funding to be able to do this. With Streaky Bay, again, it's the regional where we're kind of stretched with all the resources that we have there. So we'll definitely be looking towards the state government, state funding for development of these new programs to support youth and growth. Again, health starts from ground up, starting at the roots and working outward.
Thank you. We'll go to Margaret Baptist and we're Craig.
Yeah, thanks. I think health generally is a big issue. As a region, it's bigger than Tasmania. If I just go to mental health for a moment, we've got one girl working 3 days a week, one girl working 2, and another one working 1. And yet we're bigger than Tasmania. So I think in all elements of health, especially with just today, I was meeting with they're trying to set up community hubs in Port Lincoln to try to help the youth. We just got to really invest in health. And what I'd love to see is how we build from the region to actually do stuff that's worth us. Health generally has been a one size fits all, one shoe fits all. I don't think that's worked. We've seen a really good example in Riverland, RACE, if you have a look at that, where they've actually brought so many different people in and they're actually seeing the benefits and they're saving money. So yeah, I support all of those issues for health. It's just such a big issue.
Sam.
Yeah, I concur with the sentiment absolutely. What we need to make sure though is actually community driven. We see some really great examples on the UP and some of it's actually been driven by philanthropic donation. I mean here in Cummins, the our town Cummins model, and there's our town Kimber as well, which is doing very, very good things, and there's funding actually within Sajuna as well, our town. It's driven from the ground up, and it's nuanced to those communities' needs. And it's not just about youth, because there is opportunity absolutely to provide young people with mental health support through those programs. But it's also the whole gamut of our community. So community-driven set up a structure which works for each individual community. What works in Port Lincoln is not going to be transferable to Cleveland now. So get the structure right and have open funding, accountability of funding. The pay-for process, which is funded in our account, really doesn't put as many parameters around it as the state government does. I think that model is a really crucial one to make sure that it's driven from the ground up.
Yeah, I think I agree with Sam a little bit in that it does have to be driven by the community as well. But from a One Nation perspective, we'll probably be looking more willing to, like, here's the funding. We're not just going to throw the money at you, but we'd like to actually work with you to bring it from the ground up and get it working. And if you need the additional funding on top of that, that's something we'll look at as well.
Realistically, it stems from what's failing here at the moment with healthcare in general and all of those compounding effects of causing the end result that we've got at the moment. So I think getting to the stem of the problem with our healthcare is imperative at the moment to then prevent a lot of these issues reoccurring with youth or the centres that aren't quite working properly or not established yet. So I think getting to the root cause first and then community-based level support would be good too.
Yeah, so a community hub has to be community driven, and I think that it's the people that are living in those communities best know what the community needs as well. When it comes from what the state's role is in that, I think it is to uplift those communities and support them in what they are already doing so well. And some communities do need a bit more of a leg up than others, but it's the people that live there, that know each other, that are trying to build these connections, that know what the gaps are. And that's what the focus has to be on any sort of community hub or social centre. It's to put the focus first on the people that live there and to support them to do what they're already doing.
Thank you all. Have we got another question from the floor?
Hi, I'm Diana Mislov, the Mayor of the City of Port Lincoln. So my question is a little bit Port Lincoln centric, but Sam also touched on it a little earlier. So we're a bit landlocked, and a lot of our land that is available for development is covered in native vegetation. And I'm just wondering what policies or what support there might be for, Port Lincoln's also doing a master planning process, so we're looking to submit proposals that have rezoning, so areas of land that might have been rural might become suburban neighbourhood or things like that. So we're looking at what support you have for perhaps removing the layer of native vegetation compliance with the Act and Council to, you know, take that prohibition out of planning and development.
Great question. We might start down the end and slow down. So,
All right, so as One Nation, we believe in cutting as much red tape as possible. If that involves downsizing or potentially removing some minor government bodies that are putting these big restrictions on opening land up, we're fully supportive of doing that. We believe they've still got their role. There are certain areas where native vegetation needs to be protected, but then there's some areas where if they're just being picky, then we need to get on top of that and make sure that they actually go back within their road rules.
Right. Definitely support urban development. Sustainable development is imperative for growth. It's not just Port Lincoln, it's regional. We're finding ageing communities, for me, like, it's really important to find a new place for ageing communities, but we are surrounded by a lot of native vegetation. You know, to take a tree out nowadays is almost impossible. There's got to be, again, checks and balances for everything when it comes to native vegetation, heritage listing, all that kind of stuff, and it's, you know, it's working with the state government or the state government bodies to be able to at least look at what the policies are for the city compared to what it is in regional centres, because again, it's still not fit for purpose. If it's in Adelaide and in Port Lincoln, it's a little bit different. We need the space, need to be building a sustainable housing for a lot of the for regional centres. The only way we're going to get growth is by this kind of stuff. And, I heavily support it, and working through the process with government to find better pathways forward for future developments is, again, very, very important.
Thank you. Yeah, I do think that the Native Veg Overlay and the Native Vegetation Act does need to be looked at again. The exemptions that apply in Metro Adelaide, they should also be extended to other places that have already urbanised areas, like what we're seeing in Port Lincoln. It is at Port Lincoln and other places on the peninsula as well. It is quite prohibitive, and it is something that, again, like I said when I first spoke, it's a Adelaide office made a decision that had little to no regard of how it was actually going to impact the regions, and now it's hindering development.
Red tape is about bringing practicality back to our electric year that doesn't necessarily apply in Adelaide. So I am keen to have a voice to take with that and really have some realistic understanding of our area and showing government, building the government, how to do that.
Sam?
Yeah, thank you. It's been a while on this, but there are two aspects in particular. Now native vegetation actually doesn't exist anymore. The government in the last couple of years, probably 12 months ago, they rolled it all together with the National Parks legislation and created a biodiversity bill, and it actually added more obligation, more red tape onto South Australians, and it wasn't good for grain growers, it wasn't good for landowners, and it also added extra obligation on the local government. If you're bored one night and can't sleep, reflect on the hindsight of my contributions to that bill, because it was ideologically driven and it was not actually going to deliver better results for South Australia as a whole, specifically around the housing aspect. And there are a myriad of housing policies which we've put forward that haven't been acted on by the current government, but we've definitely mobilised when it comes to a Liberal form of government. But the native vegetation restrictions within designated township areas is one which I've been vocal on since my time in local government. So the native vegetation overlay for the planning system doesn't actually affect metropolitan area. Specifically exempted, as Dylan sort of touched on. When you've got an area with a designated township area, which every single town does in the planning system, I see no reason why there needs to be that same native vegetation overlay. It's adding extra cost. It's actually disincentivising people who are looking to develop that land. And in the end, that act is actually enabling the double dipping of the Native Vegetation Council when it comes to cost and obligation onto councils and communities. I'll give you an example. When a council or an individual developer wants to be able to change the planning code, just say change a piece of land from rural living or rural into commercial or industrial or residential, they have to pay either financially or they have to set aside parts of that land as the native vegetation aspect. And then when they actually want to go and develop it, they have to pay an offset or put aside a piece of, buy a separate piece of land and put that aside as native vegetation as well. So it really is putting a handbrake on the regional communities. It's a disincentive for investment, and we've got already enough disincentives for investment in regional areas. So that is one which I'll be working on removing. The other aspect of native vegetation, we're talking about, is roadside native vegetation. Now, I'm a purist. I think a road reserve's core function is as a road. It's not a native vegetation corridor. Its core function is a road. There's native vegetation around it, absolutely. But if we don't have a structure in place that allows for the proper clearance of trees and vegetation that overhang and intrude on that road, we're going to end up having narrower and less safe roads as well. So I'm a big supporter of having in place the same designations for road reserves as the Australian road standards. That sets out an envelope which is a lot broader than what the Native Vegetation Council allows local government to manage widening for those roadside native vegetation aspects, and once again, wider roads are safer. I think it's an easy step to make, which especially in regional communities like ours, there's plenty of other vegetation around that we can point to that will continue to provide biodiversity if that's what they're trying to look at. But let's keep our community safe and let's remove some of those impediments for the opportunity for development we've got currently.
Yeah, I'm really glad I followed Sam. Really glad. I've been involved in some developments when I was somebody else in the trip, but I even know about the Green Belt component. What we do is the hub of the region. So we actually need to look at how we can help you achieve what you want to achieve. And everyone's prepared to put up, we need to sort of change our motto, not our motto so much, but rather than tell us no, show us how we can do it. Because we want our regions to grow. I don't think there's anyone in this room that doesn't want the regions to grow. So I follow Sam.
Thank you. Have another question? Well, if not now, have a think about it. I'll throw in one. So, grain producers say we called for emergency service levy exemption for grain producers who are active. If you're elected, how will you help those farmers who are CS volunteers continue to be able to volunteer their time? Start with grain producers.
Again, it's just looking at how we can help our communities. So people are volunteering is a big thing generally. We've got to try to develop a culture of volunteering in all aspects. Whether it's Rotary Lions, whether it's just so anything we can do to help to nurture that, and if we can introduce or take those levies off to help, let's encourage more people to be a part of it. So yes, for sure.
Yeah, I agree with the concept of the sub, which I've done a bit of knowledge on in my time in government, and it's trying to just recognise that at the moment the obligation onto CFS is pretty onerous. We a couple of years ago went through the process of the review of the fire danger index, and when grain growers and farmers on the ground are trying to defend positions with decision makers coming from the top down, it's always going to be a negative outcome. So there's one which I was, in reflecting what I was hearing on the ground about the concerns about the fire danger index operation and complicating it and make it even harder for farmers and cause more division within communities was something I was pretty vocal on. And it's the same with the bureaucratic nature of some of the volunteer arrangements that we now have within our community. CFS is a big one. I talk to a lot of guys who, when you volunteer for the CFS, and we recognise that some CFS volunteers in the room today, you do it to keep your community safe, and you do it instinctively, basically, because you're ready to mobilise when you're facing challenge. The squeeze of volunteering has been felt right across regional South Australia in particular, because a population which is becoming more and more concentrated into the metro area. But there is also the extra obligation on CFS volunteers in areas like traffic management for major accidents and that sort of thing. CFS volunteers get involved to fight fires that are coming towards their family and community. But because the under-resourcing of other aspects, they're now having to become so many different additional obligations within the community, and a lot of telling me that they're getting tired of that extra obligation. And if we have a system which actually encourages volunteering in some of those emergency services aspects in particular, rather than having extra discouraging obligation, we'll have a better system. So it's something which I'll be working closely with the shadow emergency services minister on over the last probably 18 months.
I think this comes down to incentivise, not penalise. So we need to encourage those people to volunteer and not penalise them for wanting to protect their communities.
The SS National Party already has a policy that those who are volunteering in an emergency service should be paying the emergency services levy. And yeah, I think it flows on from what the other candidates have been saying so far, and current sitting member, that these people are already putting their lives, their time and everything into protecting our communities, to make it just a little bit easier for them and not adding that levy on as well, I think is a good thing.
Right.
Yeah, I agree, but it's not just for the grain producers, it's across the board. The reduction by the communities are getting smaller, people are moving away, not coming back, so emergency services, ambulance, SES, they're all the same, they're all struggling to get the volunteers, and volunteers in general, that's right across the board, but incentivising it a little bit would be imperative, but it's not just for grain producers, it is across the board, so we should be looking more broad at making more incentives and again reducing the levies for anyone that's part of the service or volunteer operation.
A little bit to add to that. So One Nation believe that farmers are usually the front line to any fires that are going through. Part of that, we believe that all farmers should be exempt from the emergency services levy. If we need to extend that to any volunteers that join as well. Part of that as well is actually also give incentives for farmers to actually upgrade their fire equipment so that they can be the first on the scene and fight the fire. So if for some reason the CFS truck can't make it in time, at least it's under control to start with, and by the time the volunteers get there, then at least they don't have to deal with as big a fire. In terms of ambulance and that sort of stuff, it's just more trying to provide funding, training, just finding the volunteers to start with. So we'd need to probably get down on the ground and find out what would actually incentivise these people to put their hand up to volunteer.
Thank you. We got another question from the floor.
You really want one?
Sure.
Do you really want to listen to me again?
You've had a couple of good questions so far.
So it is volunteerism, and it's in a chronic state. It's declining right across Australia, has been for a considerable period of time. And with due respect, this is what I was trying to say in regards to building these community hubs. And I hear what everybody's saying. I do believe they can be at least jointly funded by the state. It is time for the state to invest in social initiatives. So we couldn't get a community hub in Streaky Bay, so we developed a community garden. The first 4 or 5 weeks, there's 20 people there, and then you know the pattern. It just goes right down to nothing. So there's currently 2 of us investing enormous amounts of time. It just doesn't work that way. I don't want to see a community hub go the same way. I saw a model over in Victoria where there is at least 1 full-time paid staff, and it does a phenomenal job in serving that community. I believe it is almost an obligation of the state to start to invest more social money into this electorate. I believe that emphatically. If we have well people, a lot of the issues we're talking about now can kind of work themselves out over a period of time. If we have declining health right across our population asset base, it's just not going to happen, folks.
Happy if anyone wants to go answering that question.
I really think this may not be worded well, but we've actually got to start to really value volunteers. We've actually got to start with it. We all lead a life of service. So we've got to try to, and we've got generations that probably have sat back and said, well, we're not getting involved or it's getting too old. We've got to try to change that. We've got to change that narrative to make it more positive, get the benefits of being involved, and get the benefits of volunteering. So it's also a way of looking at things. There is, maybe we should something on the unemployment, and I'm not being rude, but I'm just saying maybe there should be things within that they actually do things. But we've just got to change so we live a life of service. Let's, every small town has got a progress association working really hard, just trying to keep the community together. We just need to keep on that. How proud are we when we go to the other side, to the Epping, and we say we come from the West Coast? So we've got that pride. We've just got to try to build it in other areas. And I think we've just got to try to work and continue to try to improve to get our volunteer base. I agree.
Anybody else want to make a comment on volunteers?
I think with the volunteer services as well, especially emergency service, SES, ambulance, requisite to actually sign up for these is quite intense. I don't know, the training is there, but it's a lot of time taken from the community or the member that wants to volunteer, so understand that these services, we need them we definitely need these services in these regional settings. I know for a fact the hours that some of these ambulance services or volunteer ambos, they're putting in probably more than what they can, because everyone's told to keep on. I guess more support would be probably something that we need to look at for regional areas or with emergency services, as in support packages, financial support packages for some of these people as well.
Anyone else want to go?
Yeah, just kind of touching on what Rod was talking about how even in the Salvation Army, when you volunteer for them, you need to have a working with children's check. And I'm like, I get that these things exist for a reason, and it's really important that, you know, we do protect the most vulnerable in our communities. But even when you want to be on the worship team of the Salvation Army, you have to have a working with children's check. You have to have all of these checks and balances. They have all of these portals set up, but of course with aging populations as well, all of these online portals aren't exactly accessible. Even when I have gone to volunteer for groups, I haven't completely gotten through all of these portals either. I think what the role of the state government in terms of aiding volunteers is to, wherever possible, reduce the burden of the volunteer on getting in there. And in terms of what brings communities together, what brings groups together, it's projects as well. When you've got a goal, when you've got a project, that's when things get done. So I think another role of the state government is to make it easier for community groups to access grants so that they can get those projects done, so that the communities actually have something to strive towards, and they can build those connections and build that community through those projects.
Anyone else? Well, I'm going to ask a question around connectivity. So we've seen the 3G switch off right across South Australia, affected every area of the state. We're noticing, and this is feedback from grain producers, that we're seeing a lot more black spots, mobile black spots. If you're elected, what will you do to help reduce some of those mobile black spots in the elected Flinders? We'll start.
So this comes back down to infrastructure that we're lacking on this electorate, and advocating for essential infrastructure for safety first and foremost, but also connectivity between regional towns and along the peninsula. I experienced it today when I had to do Steve a call, and his phone wasn't working, so I had to wait later to come there for small things like that. That in case of emergency, that's not acceptable. That's something that really needs to be looked at and advocated for.
We'll go to the president.
Yeah, I agree. It does come down to infrastructure, but I think what it comes down to is not necessarily just providing the funding for the infrastructure, but making sure that funding actually reaches the people that need it to be able to build the towers for the phones, and it's actually used the way it's supposed to be used. So yes, I'll support it and say, look, we need to put the funding into it, but we also need to make sure that the funding is going and employing the right people to make sure that this infrastructure is actually getting built, not just funded.
Right.
I think a lot of things come back to just how aware we neglected this region from saying, we just need to stand up, we just need to keep pushing. We punch above our weight in so many things. We actually just got to pick the mark and put your hand up and say, we want, we expect more, we demand more. So I'll be just very as aggressive as I can be to try to attract what we can to try to get rid of those back.
Right.
I'll speak to Elon. Look, it's really important. Black spots are a major issue. Same thing out on the west coast, far west coast peninsula there. You're trying to run a business operation out there. Connectivity is a major thing on the whole region, and it's a safety issue. Advocating for it is a must, but there needs to be changes to the application as well, because we're not getting heard. We need to design and develop a new way of trying to bring the regional South Australia together to get these huge funding, like huge projects over the line. It might be unconventional approaches to get to that point, but regional South Australia at the moment is still, or rural South Australia and Australia, South Australia, hasn't got a voice into government. Adelaide still seems to be making decisions, promising the world but never delivering. This is a big thing for safety and also connectivity for regional areas around Australia. I advocate definitely 100% for the likes of black spot towers. Elon Musk will come down here, but yeah, I think that we need to look at how we're approaching this first and develop new techniques to get what we want.
I was talking to a farmer the other day, and knowing that this forum was coming up, I asked him about the 3G network and the impact that he saw, and I found his response quite flippant. Actually, he said, "Oh, just buy a new phone." And it's not just about buying a new phone. I mean, with the change to the 5G towers, the connectivity, the way that it works is so different that even if you have a 5G phone, you're still getting black spots. Even I had some between here and Lincoln. So what the Nationals South Australia are doing is where we're taking a leaf out of the WA Nationals book, and where we've got a policy called the royalties for regions, and that's where 30% of the royalty receipts will go, that funding will go straight to the regions for infrastructure and for departments and projects and things like that. So yes, we do need greater connectivity when it comes to mobile phones for safety or just general communication. And I think the way to fund that is to actually divert that funding directly into the regions.
Thanks, Greg. A massive restriction on regional business is that connectivity piece. And the expectation for business these days is to be accessible all the time. I mean, I long for the days of being able to come home in the evening and sit on a tractor and get away from the mobile phone. And, more and more the expectation is for that to be available all the time. Look at the track record of the party, that's what I can point to. Both at federal and state level, it's been pretty disappointing to see federal Labor and then state Labor following suit the removal of the black spot mobile program to be available right across the state. State Labor have used that aspect of funding to try and swing votes in the southeast, and I think that's a dangerous precedent when you're looking at some of the challenges that right across South Australia is facing. So I'm proud to have been a pretty strong advocate for getting rural results. So just off the top of my head, I can think of the tower that got delivered in Ungara, the one that got delivered in the Tummy Hills that covers the flat area, the one up at Timber at Moseley, so the ones at the far west coast. I think the real crucial aspect we need to cover first is the highway system. We've got either local travellers that are going along our highways that drop out of service. It's dangerous situations that they're facing. Another policy which I've been pushing for is the actual enforcement when it comes to black spot funding of the co-location agreement between Telstra and Optus. I carry both SIMs within my phone, so there'll be areas where Optus is available, not Telstra, and there's areas that Telstra is available, not Optus. When you're putting state taxpayer funds into subsidising the installation of mobile towers, there should be an obligation within that to enforce the co-location agreement, which is actually in place at the moment between the major carriers. So there is an agreement which rarely gets actually enforced. I think the other aspect which I'm really cautious about is what I've seen in other areas of the state, out of desperation, local government councils have actually put up ratepayer funds to help subsidise and pay for the installation of mobile phone towers. I think it's a really dangerous precedent. In reality, telecommunications is a federal issue. The state have got involved to try and get projects over the line, and that's a stretch, but I appreciate that black spot funding which can come from states. But for local councils to be considering ratepayers' money into that sort of facility, I think is really pushing for that extra funding and saying, well, we're not going to put these installations in place unless we get councils or community to chip in. So that co-location aspects are really pretty simple one, and that will minimise the amount of capital investment that each developer has to have, and then utilising existing facility. I mean, we got a small cell installed up at Brooker, and it reaches all the different aspects of the Glover conglomerate. It's a small footprint, but it was a relatively cheap delivery, which provides.
Thank you. Have we got any more questions from the floor? We can do the time thing, Steve.
Steve Glover, Yolanda or Brooker really, and right under the phone tower at Brooker. What a great thing. However, unfortunately today, when Megan was trying to ring, I was 3 k's the other side of the bitumen, 0 phone.
I didn't realise Steve Uber was available.
Steve Uber, very expensive. Just looking for a comment really. We haven't touched on water yet. We talked about a lot of other things, so just interested to get a comment from each of you about the desal plant in Billy Lights Point. That's probably Diana's one really, but I'm interested in what your thoughts are there, and also the absolutely wonderful facility we've got at the Todd Reservoir, which has just been filled with some fish by a good premier. So he was out there making his bass statement the other day. Well, that's what I call it anyway. Thank you, mate. It's a small chuckle. Yeah, a comment on the water, and well, we need water. Everyone needs water. We're not going to grow any town without water, or you can't do anything without water. So, comment.
Yeah, good question. Massive issue. Phil, start with you.
Yeah. Port Lincoln wasn't made the capital because there wasn't enough water. That's one of the reasons that Adelaide was chosen to be the capital instead. Water on the peninsula has been an ongoing issue, one that has been known for decades, if not centuries. And yet, when we're told that we're going to run out, hands are sat on and then hands are kicked down the road. So we have the situation that we have with the desal now. A lot of people disagree with its location, but I do think that some solution is better than nothing. I think, and the SA National's position is that we want to put further support into what they call alternative sources of water. So that's stormwater, that's non-potable bore water, that's wastewater, and using those things in appropriate ways to stop us from using perfectly good drinking water or, watering your garden, but literally flushing the toilet. That's water that could be drank, that's water that could be used for so many different things, and it's going straight down the drain. So that's the national position.
Brenton.
I've had a couple of interesting conversations with one of my mentors about water in Port Lincoln. So the desal plant has its place and we support it. We believe it is a necessary requirement. But there has also been some reports where there's actually plenty of underground water that can at least supply water for about 20, 30 years. So on that side of things, there is other options to the desal plant, but that can also be reused in other ways as well. But I think the main thing is the capture of water. A lot of the water, as Dylan said, just goes down the drain. So whether that's dams on farms, bigger rainwater tanks in town, even community rainwater tanks that can actually help supply the town water. You really need to catch the water that falls, not necessarily try and pull it out of the ocean and put it into the water system. Like I said, it has its place and we support it. It's just, we think that rainwater is better than salt water.
Megan.
So water is an ongoing issue with every person that I've spoken to travelling across this electorate, and it boils down again to infrastructure, lack of maintenance, and not having anything in place for broken infrastructure, no repairs and maintenance. You guys don't get into your tractors and try and drive it without repairs and maintenance. You don't drive into the ground. So that's what I will be advocating for this electorate is more repairs and maintenance to maintain our infrastructure, to not get to a point where we don't have
Sam.
3 minutes. Because this is a whole core subject in itself, reality. 4 minutes, right? Okay. So firstly on detail, look, you know, I think it's well published that I fought hard to not have that allocation of females. I think it's a retrograde move. It's one which adds extra elements of risk to an enclosed-based system, which is being obviously utilised for fishing, for agriculture, but also, you know, we know that it's in a fine environmental balance as it is. My fallback was if they're going to put it there, at least get the pipelines away into the Gulf further, so the water movement will be able to try and dissipate some of the chemical and the brine which is put out by the desal plant. Neither of those happen. We've got a situation with a desal, pretty Light's point, where the intake for the desal plant is about 500 metres away from the wastewater treatment plant outfall, and the outfall for the desals in and amongst that vicinity as well. So I think it's been really poorly managed, and those contingencies haven't been put in place. And it's right now. It's going to be nearly $500 million by the time this project is finished. $500 million of infrastructure on the peninsula is the biggest investment by a long way. And what have we got? We've got 5.5 litres of desalinated water. I've been frustrated with desal water's inflexibility. There are other alternative desalination technologies which are constantly being developed, and I hope to facilitate some of the meetings with some of those proponents for SA water, but they continue to be inflexible, and when it blew out from $300 million to $490 million, and then Minister Chairman said, well, if it was down the sleeve, it would cost $1 billion. Like, they just throw these numbers out flippantly. So we've got what we've got, but we've also haven't got a long-term solution for any sort of growth. So the amount that desal puts in is for current usage only. The Todd Reservoir, I could talk about that for a while. Basically, when Minister Hunter, there's a few governments ago or later, they had a situation where the dam wall, to conform with the national dam guidelines, they had to prepare for a 1 in 600,000 year flood. 1 in 600,000 years, and they could either spend $20 million to build the dam wall stronger, or they ended up spending $16 million to basically put a drain in the bottom of the Todd Reservoir, and went from being able to hold 11 gigalitres of water to now 0.9 gig. It's just a bubble. It's really sad to see, infrastructure was good 100 years ago, now not being utilised. They mismanaged the system. They had too much of the saline water rather than try to manage it, and we've got a problem in this which is the mass survive. The other aspect, that we need to consider is there are parts of our peninsula which aren't actually on the system that was incredibly designed to flow by gravity all the way from the Todd Reservoir to Sejuna and beyond. So Elliston aren't on that system. They need an alternate solution, and that is the government needs to be looking at some of these alternative delivery methods. Street gate is another place as well, which there are people that have been told your housing block can't be serviced by the main water system. So development being restricted because of the lack of investment into key infrastructure like the pipeline which goes through the street and the tank system, which if you go there, you realise that the tanks that supply Street Bay are only half full because they're not the integrity of them are that undermined by regulation. So water, people talk for a while. SA Water hate it when I come into community meetings because they know I always come with a swag full of questions about their operations and the failing infrastructure within the community.
Right, great.
The desal, what people may or may not know, and what I've learned by travelling around some water engineers over the last 2 months, has been desal plants in. I think we all agree it's the wrong places. I know that they didn't want the brine to go out there, etc. But also we've got dodge sides. South Australia, we're only one of 3 places in the world that has dodge sides. So it is a band-aid. They're going to drop really south facing from 6 gigalitres down to 3 gigalitres, and this will do direct out, but it's not a long-term solution. I was trying to find, when I was looking at my phone, water development report 22-24, 73% of our water comes on the top end from the River Murray. The SA Water, and I actually seen, SA Water have actually had a proposal where we could actually turn the tap off and we could actually export water from our region. We could also export power from our region. So that's the sort of visionary stuff that I think we need to look at. That's the solution. That then opens the air peninsula for business. Water and power security.
Right.
Yeah, innovation, technology and consultation. Three things. West Coast Air Peninsula, major issue, Sam touched on it. Go up to our tanks in Treaty Bay, tap the sides, only about a quarter full, just over a quarter. But there is some, again, there's always some controversy about getting water. Water is, again, we're in the driest part of Australia, or driest part of the world here. But there is some amazing technologies out there that can help support growth of water to the regions. Now, again, it comes back to consultation as well, and looking into these processes. We do have, again, another bit of a controversial thing is mining. Mining in the Air Peninsula is a big thing. It is come up on some of the forums before, but also mining can be advantageous to industry. We need industry. We need to develop our region. And some of these mines, you know, well, you're looking out at the West Coast, the Andromeda mine, they're going to phase 2 and the water increase is beyond the supply that can go past them and on the Treaty Bay. And by utilising some of the industries, we might be able to get infrastructure. And you know, these are the things that we've got to look above and beyond. Because I know Alliston is again not on the water line, so we need to supply Alliston as well. But there is again always technology and it's always advancing quite rapidly. So these things we're going to have to start looking at. Otherwise, again, we won't be able to build sustainable development around what we have.
Thank you. Theon's got a question for us, and then we'll go from there.
I was just wondering where everyone sits as far as the knee-jerk reaction of the gun laws that the federal government is trying to slap on every state government. As a local farmer with firearms, I just don't understand why we are always just getting wrapped over the knuckles when we already had to get wrapped over the knuckles to get the gun in the first place. And I'm just wondering where you're all standing on that little argument.
Thanks for the question, Leon. We might start Anderson with Craig. Right away.
It is a major reaction. It is also I'm going to hold it as well, but it is a major reaction. I went to the Rural 3 days ago and I asked what instructions, what information that they've got about the buyback and all that. They've actually got nothing yet. So whilst I've actually said and they've made all these particular statements, we've got to recover knee-jerk reactions. And you go to someone like, and that's the only one I can go to Portland and on the Peninsula. They said they've not got no rules or regulations as to what they can or can't do.
Can I just ask where they're going to try and fund the buyback from? Whether the state government's going to come up with it or it's federal?
I just agree with it's a knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah,
That's probably a hard question for the Kansas answer, but we'll stick on gun laws and positions.
Yeah, so the position of the Liberal Party is that we don't support any more restrictions on legal firearms owners. South Australia's gun laws are very different to New South Wales. That's where obviously, you know, tragic event that suddenly got the attention of the whole nation, and the federal government, made noises trying to deflect attention away from what I think the root causes. I won't go down that pathway. But so South Australia Liberal Party doesn't support any additional restrictions on legal firearms owners. And the question around the buybacks, we as a Liberal government wouldn't be contributing to the federal government's gun buyback financially. So what is being asked of states is that they co-contribute 50% of the amount of money that it's going to take for a gun buyback. later that will want to do it, well, they can do it in their own isolation. The state legal party will be participating in that as well. I think it's really important for people to understand just how much obligation is required of firearm owners. Only yesterday I went out to the Port Lincoln Pistol and Gun Club and spoke to them. So arms is one thing, we need firearms as tools of their trade to be able to make sure that they're looking after their assets and obligations. But also, there's a whole cohort of people who that's their sport, that's their passion, and they need these tools of their sport to be able to participate. And for there to be conversations in the eastern states about restricting numbers, I think it's really naive as to the reality of what the situation is on the ground. So we won't be exploring any restriction on numbers. We think our existing laws are strong enough, and we won't be getting involved in any buyback that's driven by the federal government, because in the end, that obligation shouldn't be on our people at all. So we've been really definitive about it. We thought by later and say we need to do the same, because we've heard nothing from it. So we've heard nothing about what the intention of the Labor government is post an election if they were to form government. And that causes concern for me, because if you're not hearing something, I worry that their intentions are trying to hide what the reality is.
I don't agree with additional red tape on producers, but I agree with additional red tape on people that need those guns to be able to make a living, and even especially as well, like Sam saying. So bringing things back to basics and advocating for that in government is something that I would stand up for.
So it was on the 23rd of December that I wrote to both the Times and the Advocate, and I think only the Times published it, that when there were the first murmurings of these restrictions being brought in both about guns and about hate speech, the Nationals have been against that from the get-go, and I have as well. We would not support any kind of further restrictions on lawful firearm owners, whether they're farmers, whether they're shooters. We already have some of the strictest laws in the world. We're not going to start punishing people who are already following all the rules because of a tragedy. It was a tragedy, but you can't blame the tool for what happened, and you can't punish people who aren't doing anything wrong for something horrendous and horrific and evil that happened. And that's the Nationals' position.
I went down to Lincoln Rural the other day and bought myself 2 guns. I support gun ownership, absolutely. That's it.
Yeah, as One Nation, we totally oppose any new gun laws coming in. We agree that the ones that are already in place are strict enough. There's no point putting more laws, regulations and stuff on lawful gun ownership, because the people who actually have caused this argument to come around were actually criminals to start with. And as we know, criminals don't follow the law. So it doesn't matter how many laws you bring in, they're still going to do what they want to do because they're criminals. So any new laws, we totally oppose.
Thank you all. We have one final question from there, and then we'll go to the final statements and comments.
Thank you. I know we're a country and a state full of significant disasters, but the algal bloom has been one that's been unprecedented and unknown territory. I just wonder, and I thank the state government for the assistance they've provided to communities, but I just wonder if there anything that any of the candidates would do differently or in addition to what has already been provided.
Thank you. Good question, Francis.
Yeah, this one's a tricky one. I know the state government has had conflicting views within its own government at the moment as to whether it's getting worse or getting better. One Nation believes that the research needs to be done at the core front in the water. We need to make sure we know what the algal bloom's actually doing, what areas it's affecting, and coming up with ideas of what we can actually do to possibly restrict it. I know Whyalla did a whole bubble wall, which seemed to have worked around all the cuttlefish. It's these sort of things that we need to look at rather than just going, okay, we've got an algal bloom, let's throw money at all the fishermen so they can keep living, which we need to do. They need to keep making a lifestyle, but we also need to tackle the problem of the algal bloom itself and where it actually came from as well.
Early reporting systems were way out. This was back the first case was down in Rogue, and then it was palmed off for months after until it came up to the lower southeast, where it became a real problem. There's been a lot of information that's come out with the algal bloom that all the information hasn't been filtered through to the public, and I think, I know that has caused some major issues and upsets, and also the science behind it isn't quite hasn't been quite forthcoming as well. To move forward, the algal blooms have happened all over the world multiple times. There is not much we can do except ride the wave, but early prevention or early notification would have been might have been able to help.
I think it's tough for me to say what I would have done, if I was in that position, and hindsight's 2020. But I think the better focus is building up resilience going forward and having preventative measures as well. Our lab is doing some fantastic work with their oyster reefs, and oysters and other filter feeders could help with future algal blooms as well. But it's also something that was that I've heard is that we have drought relief schemes for farmers. An idea that where the state government could support fishes is another environmental-based support system for when something like this does happen. Because regardless of what we think about where it came from or how it was handled, the consensus is that it will happen again eventually, and we need to make sure that we're prepared to support our industries to weather it next time better than this time.
Being at the forefront of the algal bloom, being in the seafood industry, the response time, I would say was lacking, and the information from commercial fishermen that are out there at the forefront of it every single day, that information has been very handy for the state to take on board and utilised for their benefit. So what we're doing differently is response time and using the people who are on the ground who know what they're seeing and know what they're seeing today.
Yeah, I mean, this is one which you speak about reaction. I got frustrated because it was 12 months ago that we were hearing on the ground from people with concerns about what was happening around Cleario, and we were bringing that up with government. They didn't act on that for several months later. So when you've got a government who's more worried about managing the TR than the actual incident, I think it's a massive big red cross next to the way that the government actually reacted to the algal bloom. If you're actually proactive and listening to people on the ground at the time, you could have put in place steps to try and negate the issue when it was in a really small footprint, as opposed to when it got away. We only started hearing about it from the government when there were dead fish that started to wash up on the beach and Glenelg and the like. So there are alarm bells that were ringing several months before. And when something like that gets out of control, and I mean, even a few weeks ago, the Premier said a statement, well, the algal bloom now is pretty well non-existent. And straight across the water at York Peninsula, there's whole big swathes of dead wildlife that are washing up and quite obvious algal bloom conditions. So when you've got a government that's more worried about the PR than the actual outcome, I think it's a really dangerous thing. Megan made a really good point, and this is something which I heard at the time from a lot of fishers, and I was passing on up. The people that are on the water that could have been doing the testing to proactively try and ascertain whereabouts the footprint of the algal bloom was getting to, they weren't being utilised, and the site that actually formed the foundation for their position for the previous 12 months was actually done either. And the excuse that we got from
part for me is that, you know, these things have happened in other parts of the world. It's a different message and the way it changed from the government, etc. Just, I think, through confusion, not so much confusion, but we just got different messages. And Sam's right, you know, what we actually wanted was interaction, more data, more to be able to say what we could do, rather than just that messaging that we are. So hopefully we don't see it, you know, hopefully we don't see it in our area, but is of concern that messaging is coming out.
We do have one more final question.
This one's to Sam, but my name's Dominic Mendelson. I've been an abalone diver probably for the last 30 years, but I have a passion for Eyre Peninsula, so first of all, thanks to everyone for their passion and wanting to represent Flinders. Earlier, Sam spoke about rail. I wasn't clear on what side of the fence you are. Are you 100% for rail, or are you only for the roads? I'm not too sure. Like, I know I went to a meeting a few years ago and I got the feeling that you were definitely against rail. But what is your position right now? Do you want rail or do you not?
I've always been supportive of the best outcome of trade, and like I said, I fought part of it anyway at the time we keep the rail as long as possible. Until actually know how much it's going to cost and to know what is actually going to be doing. We can't say, like, I mean, all due respect to the rest of the candidates of the year, if that business case comes out and says it's a $2 billion price tag, we can't support it. If it comes out and says it's $100 million, well, absolutely, let's get behind it. Somewhere in the middle, there needs to be a trigger point to look at all or partial open. So until we actually have that business case on, like, we could say theoretically that, yeah, this is great. If we had all the grain that is currently serviced by the existing rail corridor back on the rail line, like we did 30 years ago, there'd be a lot less pressure on the road and there'd be a lot less need for that investment. But we can't say that until we actually see the business case. And you know, I think that the government are deliberately sitting on this and trying to keep down the road, and that's what's very frustrating to me. The EPLGA actually contributed 25% of the funding which actually put this study in place. You know, councils and their communities are talking to money. I don't know why the government is continuing to sit on.
You said $2 billion.
I don't know the number. That's the thing. I really don't know the number because that business case hasn't been released.
Are you for it? You for it?
At a price point, it's got to make financial sense, and absolutely it does. I'm right behind it. I've said that at the top. So.
We probably need to wrap things up at the time. All right, I'll let you have one.
I just wanted to follow up what Dom was saying. There's a document over there on the table that a company has done the research and said they're prepared to build the rail at $250 million. So it's there, it's ready to go. They want to go. We just need support for rail.
Thank you. All right, we're going to final pictures from the candidates. So we'll give everyone, which is difficult, but we'll give everyone 3 minutes. I'll time you all, and we will start with Dylan, please.
So what do we?
So this is your final pictures. Final pictures to why people should vote for you.
Yeah. The Nationals have always had those who live out bush at heart, and that's not going to change with me. And I think over the last few months, what we've seen is we've seen a party that sticks to their guns. And I know there isn't any current representation on a state level for South Australia, but if you look at the incentives that have been brought in WA with royalties for regions, you've seen the behaviour of the federal party. It's indicative of a party that sticks by their guns and sticks by their values and doesn't capitulate, doesn't change. We are for the regions, it's where we live, it's where we work, it's what we like.
Megan.
I'm looking to advocate for our region and our region only, to safeguard what we have here that is so beautiful for our children and for our children to experience what we did as growing up as well. We have such a region here that is so vast, but it's also connected. So I would like to advocate for Flinders moving forward.
As One Nation, we believe we are the third viable option behind the two, I know we say uni parties, but Labor and Liberal. But also, we've got a unique situation here in Flinders where with One Nation, if we get through and I get voted in, you'll have myself, but if we also get Legislative Council, you're going to have a local Legislative Council member living on the Eyre Peninsula as well, who's really going to push hard for our area.
Well, unconventionally, I'd like to change the whole scenario a little bit. I'd like to be pushing for a department, complete new department here on the or for regional South Australia. That department will be called the Department of Regional Sustainability. That department will encompass all what we're asking for and be the voice for government, a voice for the region, not region, rural South Australia, rural remote South Australia. I'll be advocating for a major change, not just for road and rail. I want to have a system in place that makes the regional South Australia be heard in the government that's sitting today. So that's what I want to advocate for. I want to advocate for a major change, not just put a band-aid on it. We need to change the way that we're looking at how we present ourselves to Adelaide. Biggest thing that I've heard throughout the whole very small 3.5 weeks that I've been travelling around the state is that the voices aren't heard from Adelaide, and it's really important that the voices are heard. Now, at the moment, what's happening is the same thing. We all go to the government and we're asking for the same thing. But what we need to do is align as a region or regional South Australia, and we need to put it forward. By creating a department for regional rural sustainability, that is our voice. It allows us as members of Parliament to do our job and work through the communities and work with the people to present that to a governing body that is now that will be looking after regional South Australia. It's a major template. It'll be an exciting template change. So that's what I'm advocating for. I'm advocating for proper change.
Great.
We've got 11 candidates, I think. That's what the Electoral Commission is saying. We should end up looking at this and nominating and 28 nominations. So I think people are really, really frustrated. They want to see change. And right now we're seeing billions and millions of dollars being quoted and thrown around. And if we get in, we'll do this, if we get in, we'll do that. I believe we need an independent so that we can actually call them out and make sure they deliver. Because that's what we need. We need a strong voice that's prepared to stand up, not tied to the party alignment, and actually say, this is what our region, this is our home. We're talking about our place. Let's be really strong about that. And let's push that. You know, we need that from the regional point of view. And I'd love the opportunity to be able to stand up to the major parties and say, let's make your promise come true. Let's honour your promise.
And
thanks, Brad. Well, I also think I'm the best individual candidate is putting their hand up for election. This election, I've got the experience, but I've also got the drive to be able to make sure that electric our region is well represented, safe, strong, smart leadership that works through issues, regardless of whether I'm in government or not. I can point to several different projects which, because I've got close working relationships with decision makers, both departmental and at ministerial level, that I can go to and put the case for the peninsula and get on the phone straight away. I don't have to try and organise a paid meeting with the minister. I can actually just get on the phone and really find out what the actual issue is going to be and put them into it. So this is something which I bring as a sitting member, but someone who's got experience both in business and local government before that, and that's why I'll put my hand up to continue to be. I think I'm well equipped and well capable to continue that close representation and that hard work which I've done over the last 2 years.
Right, thank you all, and appreciate everyone coming out. That concludes the forum. Thank you for all the good questions, and thank you to the candidates. We covered a lot of territory tonight, so appreciate that. I have a GPSA app with the candidates as well, so make sure you help them.
If registered.
Can I put it on?